While James was enjoying a movie at home and eating some popcorn, he suddenly bit down on an unexpected object, a beautiful, gleaming ring hidden amidst the kernel. It appeared to be a wedding ring, but he had never seen it before. And the inscriptions on the inside made James curious to find out whom it belonged to. So he visited a local jeweler, wanting to make sure the ring was returned to its owner. "Good morning, sir. How can I help you today?" The jeweler, Mr. Wilson, greeted James as soon as he entered the shop the next day. He was the first customer of the day. James greeted him back with a smile, and he said, "You're never going to believe what I'm here for," a chuckle escaping his lips. He told Mr. Wilson about the ring and how he had found it in a bag of popcorn. He left out the part where he had almost choked on it, and he enjoyed seeing how his eyes widened in disbelief. "Well, I have certainly never heard something like this before. Could I see the ring, please?" he finally answered. James nodded and took the ring out of his pocket, placing it on the counter. He had wrapped it in a cloth to keep it safe, and he carefully unwrapped it under Mr. Wilson's close supervision. Of course, his interest had been piqued by James' story. Seconds later, the jeweler finally laid his eyes on the ring, and he gasped. "It is indeed truly beautiful," he said as he inspected the ring more closely. "How could this ever have ended up in a popcorn bag?" he mumbled. When James told him to take a look at the inscription, he grabbed a magnifying glass and tried to decipher what was written on the inside of the band. And this was the moment things changed. Suddenly, Mr. Wilson turned around with his back to James and started muttering something like, "This can't be true. I cannot be seeing this right." He stood still for a few seconds as if contemplating what he was going to do, and then he disappeared into the back office of his shop, leaving James alone and confused. "And sir, it's Mr. Wilson, right? Is everything all right?" he asked, but he received no response. He was at a loss of what to do. He didn't want to intrude and enter the back office without approval. But he did want that ring back. It may not really be his, but he was the one who had found it, and he'd like to keep it until he found the owner. Both James and his wife, Zara, had agreed that they wanted to return the ring to whomever it belonged to. However, there was still a lot they didn't know, and they would soon realize that their mission wouldn't be as easy to fulfill as they had thought. And to the contrary, it would only cause them trouble, a lot of trouble. Minutes later, Mr. Wilson returned to the shop and stood behind his desk, skeptically looking at James. James was relieved and thought he'd get the ring back and go home now, where he'd think of different ways to track down the ring's original owner, but that was not the case. Oh, no, he wasn't going anywhere yet. "Oh, there you are. Could I have that ring back, please?" "I need to leave. I'm running late for an appointment," James told him. Of course he had no appointment, but he just wanted to leave. However, Mr. Wilson shook his head and warily asked him, "Sir, I have some questions for you. Where did you say you found this ring?" James repeated the same story again, but Mr. Wilson didn't seem to believe him. "In a popcorn bag." "Are you sure about that?" he asked, raising one eyebrow in suspicion. "Yes, like I told you twice already. Now, I'd like the ring back." "I'll find another jeweler to help me," James snapped, getting frustrated by the whole situation now. However, Mr. Wilson had other plans. "I'm sorry, sir, but I can't let you leave," he said. "Well, you can't make me stay either. Give me that ring now," James replied. His patience was running out, and he didn't like the jeweler's tone. Wasn't he the customer after all? Shouldn't he be treated with respect? To his dismay, things were only going to get worse from here. James noticed that Mr. Wilson was not holding the ring, and he also couldn't see it anywhere on the counter. He realized that the ring was still in the back office behind a locked door. Mr. Wilson noticed him looking at the door behind him, and he gave him a smug smile. "Yes, the ring is locked safely in my office, and the police are on their way." James' eyes grew wide in disbelief upon hearing this. "The police? Why on earth did you call the police?" he asked, unable to hide his surprise. "Come on, don't act like you don't know why. Did you really think I wouldn't catch on to you?" "I know what you're doing," the jeweler replied, now also raising his voice for the first time. And James didn't understand what was happening, but he didn't have a good feeling about it. In a split second, he decided, "Fuck that ring, I'm leaving," and he turned around, heading for the door. However, just as he was about to place his hand on the "No, Mr. Wilson told him, "I wouldn't do that if I were you." "I'm not. I haven't done anything wrong," James yelled back. He truly had no idea what the jeweler was on about, and he also didn't understand why he would possibly have needed to call the cops on him. However, it was too late for him now. Anyway, he heard the wailing sound of sirens in the distance, and they were only becoming louder and thus closer. And as the sound of sirens crescendoed, the shop door swung open. Two uniformed officers stepped inside, their expressions unreadable. James Arthur Reed, one called out, glancing at the slip of paper in his hand. James nodded, his stomach nodding. I'm Officer Tate, and this is Officer Lynn. We need you to come with us to address an accusation of theft. The cold click of handcuffs echoed on Mr. Wilson. Look of regret shadowing his features avoided James' bewildered gaze. The surreal turn of events left James feeling as though he was a character in someone else's plot. But I just found he started, but the firm hand of the law on his shoulder suggested this wasn't the time for explanations. In the stark back room of the jeweler's shop, Officer Lynn peered skeptically at James over a metal table. So you found a high-value ring. In a bag of popcorn, she asked, her voice dripping with disbelief. James recounted the story, how the sharp edge of the ring had pressed against his molar, how he had extracted it from the fluffy kernels. The officers exchanged a glance that needed no words, a glance that said, "We've heard better tales, James." Hands cuffed, felt the weight of their doubt pressing down on him. The ring, so recently glittering amongst popcorn, now felt like a millstone around his neck. Mr. Wilson's hands trembled slightly as he held up a photograph next to the ring. The resemblance was undeniable. This ring, he began, his voice shaky, matches the description of an item reported stolen just last week. James' protest was immediate, but I'd never seen that ring before it popped out of the popcorn bag. The jeweler's eyes, once warm and friendly, now held a hardness that seemed to seal James' fate. The officers meticulously transcribed their observations, their pens scrawling across their notepads like the relentless ticking of a clock, each stroke marking another moment of James' dwindling freedom. Mr. Reed, Officer Tate's voice carried a stern warning, piercing through the heavy silence of the interrogation room. This is not a trivial matter. The ring you found is a critical piece of an ongoing investigation. James felt the weight of their suspicion pressing down on him as he struggled to find the right words. What had started as a simple night out had now thrust him into a whirlwind of doubt and accusation. The drive to the precinct was suffocatingly silent, the presence of the officers a constant reminder of his precarious situation. Upon arrival, the harsh fluorescent lights illuminated the sterile surroundings, casting a stark contrast to the chaos swirling in James' mind. Led through the station's maze-like corridors, James couldn't escape the scrutinizing gazes of the seasoned detectives. He glanced a verdict on his innocence. Inside the interrogation room, the detectives' relentless questioning felt like an assault on James' integrity. Detective Harlow's skepticism hung heavy in the air as he probed James' account of the ring's miraculous appearance. James recounted his story with unwavering resolve, but the detective's disbelief remained palpable. Despite his consistent retelling, the truth seemed to slip further from his grasp with each passing moment. Charts and timelines adorned the walls, a visual representation of the detective's doubts. James clung to his alibi, the timestamps placing him innocently in the popcorn store as his own lifeline in the sea of suspicion. But even as he stood by his truth, James knew it might not be enough to sway the scales of justice in his favor. Released on bail, James found himself thrust back into a world tainted by doubt and scrutiny. The whispers and sidelong glances of his neighbors served as constant reminders of the accusations that still lingered. As he and Zara grappled with the aftermath of the ordeal, their once peaceful home became a battleground of emotions, but amidst the chaos, they found solace in their unwavering each other. The turning point came with the revelation of security footage, providing irrefutable evidence of James' innocence. With the judge's decisive ruling, James emerged from custody, his freedom restored, but his battle far from over. Determined to clear his name once and for all, James and Zara embarked on a quest for truth, piecing together fragments of information in search of exoneration. Their journey led them to a Sprawl Online forum, where they discovered a network of individuals sharing eerily similar experiences of false accusations and mysterious discoveries. And through their collective efforts, James and Zara uncovered a pattern of deceit that stretched far beyond their own ordeal. Popcorn bags, it seemed, had become unwitting vessels for a nefarious scheme of theft and deception. With newfound allies and a growing body of evidence, James set out to expose the truth behind the elaborate ruse. Through surveillance and investigation, they traced the criminal operation back to its source, unraveling the intricate web of lies that had ensnared them. With the help of law enforcement, James orchestrated a sting operation that ultimately brought the perpetrators to justice. As the truth came to light, the community breathed a collective sigh of relief, and James found vindication in the faces of those who had doubted him. In the end, James' journey through the depths of suspicion and accusation had not only restored his innocence, but also exposed the dark underbelly of a criminal enterprise. And as he stood on the threshold of a new beginning, James knew that the strength of his character had carried him through the darkest of times.